Coming up on today's show.
It's something that we perform repeatedly, almost subconsciously, and it can be good or bad, or it can be really neat.
People have more bad habits than good habits, or vice versa.
Then we will have a reaction of behavior that we choose in response to the trigger. And then the third leg of the stool is the payoff that we receive as a result or consequence of the behavior that we chose.
How to create habits and why it's important. Today on Keeping You Organized. Hello and welcome to Keeping You Organized. Today we are going to talk about habits, why they're important and how we create them. And joining us is Shauna Turner from the Shauna Method. How are you doing today, Shauna?
I'm just doing great. I'm so excited to be talking about this subject.
Habits are good. That is, good habits are good. I don't know, bad habits are bad, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about both of them today. But let's just start off and talk about what the definition of a habit is anyway.
So a habit is just a routine of behavior. It's something that we perform repeatedly, almost subconsciously, and it can be good or bad, or it can be really neither.
Okay. Do you think people have more bad habits than good habits, or vice versa?
That's a good question. I think everyone has both, and I think that we tend to focus a lot on our bad habits, and we get down on ourselves and are critical for our bad habits. But we really do have a lot of good habits too.
Okay. Well, let's first start and talk about why habits are important. What's the kind of the framework around that?
So a habit is important because it is very powerful influencer of how we behave. It's something that we form through a little pattern I talk about, a little triangle that I talk through. And once a habit is formed, it really is very powerful and affects daily life.
Well, and like we said before, it can affect it in a good way or a bad way as well. All right, so you teased the little triangle. Is this like three pieces of the habit, or tell us a little bit more about that?
So that's like the three-legged stool.
Well, that's awesome.
Of how these habits get
formed. Three-legged stools are
right.
always, you got to have those incorporated in just about every talk because it's the perfect thing, I guess. So.
That's true. Well, they're easy to remember. Everybody can remember three. So the way that we form a habit is first there will be some sort of a trigger. And then we will have a reaction of behavior that we choose in response to the trigger. And then the third leg of the stool is the payoff that we receive as a result or consequence of the behavior that we chose. And then depending on when that payoff is, that sort of feeds up back into the trigger. So the next time we experience that trigger, that may influence the behavior we choose, and then it just goes on and on.
It's kind of circular motion, even though it's a triangle. But
that's right.
All right, let's talk about triggers. Give us an example of what triggers are and how those might work in either a good or a bad way.
So a trigger is anything we encounter. Typically, the time it matters most is the first time we encounter a situation. So let's just take a simple, easy one. Maybe the trigger is, I'm bored. Okay, I'm sitting around, I have nothing to do. So then I need to choose a behavior. And maybe I choose, I'm going to have a brownie because I'm bored. And then the payoff is, yum, that tasted good, I enjoyed that. And then perhaps the next time we come to that trigger of I'm bored, we're going to be more likely to choose the brownie because we had that positive short-term payoff.
Well, and there's got to be stuff going on in the brain because I know part of that particular example, you've got sugar, and we love our little sugar boost. Of course, later on we crash from it, but what's going on there anyway?
Right. So this is what's amazing to me about habits, because what they really are showing us how efficient our brains are. The brain actually forms habits so that it can work more efficiently and effectively. So when we are making new decisions and new triggers and we're encountering new circumstances, we are sort of activating and using this front part of our brain. It's called the prefrontal cortex of our brain. So we're consciously thinking, considering, and making a very aware decision. But over time, if we make that same choice over and over and over again, every time we encounter that trigger, then the brain actually learns that that's what we're going to choose, and it moves that choice, that decision, down into the back of our brain to a part called the basal ganglia of our brain. And therefore, the next time we encounter that trigger, the brain will just automatically tell us to make that choice again without us having to spend so much time thinking and weighing the cons and the pros. So it's more efficient, which is why it's so powerful, because it saves us thinking time. But it's also powerful because once it's nested back there in the back of our brain, it's harder to change it, whether it's a good habit or a bad habit.
Now, that brings up the question then, how long does it take for it to move from the front to the back? I mean, and is that actually where the habit kind of officially is developed?
So you're probably getting into a little more science than I probably am qualified to answer. But the general rule of thumb is that if you do something for 3 or 4 weeks repeatedly, that the brain will then shift and make that part of your routine and your habitual response.
Yeah, I think also they relate that in marketing to, like, you got to hear a marketing message so many times. Your brain will maybe filter it out and say, nope, that's a advertising message. And then eventually maybe it pulls it in. I don't know if that's a great thing or not, but let's try to apply this a little bit to, let's go back to the chocolate thing. How quickly do you think that trigger and effect will take to become a habit?
Right. So that's a really good point, because it sometimes is easier for us to form a bad habit than it is to form a good habit. Because frequently the payoff, that third leg of the triangle there, for a bad habit is instant. It's right in the moment. And so, for example, when we bit into that brownie, that was that rush of sugar deliciousness into our mouth, and right away we had the yum. However, over time, that habit may actually not serve us well if we gain weight or whatever, but we don't feel that in the moment. We're focused on that instant payoff. In contrast, in many cases, a good habit will not have that instant payoff, that instant positive payoff, but will have a very positive long-term payoff if we stick with it. So perhaps, let's say I decide that I'm going to go jogging, and I have not been jogging, and I go out and run a mile and I come home. My payoff in the moment is probably that I'm tired and that I'm sweaty and that I'm breathing hard. And so it takes a real effort to come back and make that choice to go jogging again in the short term. But in the long term, of course, the payoff is terrific. I might lose weight, I'll have more energy, my body will be working more efficiently, I may live longer. So it's important when we're forming good habits, new good habits, that we give ourselves time to do that, acknowledging that it might just take a little bit longer, but that the payoff in the long run is well worth the effort.
Now, do you think you need to try to analyze yourself and say, what are the triggers going on, especially if you want to change a bad habit into a good habit and you want to change the result of the trigger, reprogram it? Is that what we're trying to do, or do we want to try to come up with a whole new trigger to kind of overcome certain things?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. A lot of times people just try to quit a bad habit. And to just remove a habit from your life without putting anything else in place is very, very difficult. It's always better to sort of crowd out the bad habit by starting a new good habit. So if we go back to the brownie example and we say, gosh, I've been having too many brownies at night, late night snacking. One choice would be to say, I'm just going to quit that bad habit. But that's very difficult, because evening rolls around and the back of your brain wants you to get up and go get a snack. So it's better to form a new habit that replaces that. So for example, maybe you say, from now on, instead of watching TV in the evening where I'm going to be vulnerable to wanting to grab a snack, I'm going to go outside and go for a walk, or I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to go out and meet friends, to do something that makes it difficult for you to go into that automatic bad habit. And it's actually interesting that if you want to change a bad habit, it's easier to do if you are not in your regular everyday situation, because that's where the power of the familiar is keeping you operating in this, efficient way from your brain's perspective. So let's say you wanted to quit cigarettes. You might actually find it's easier to do that when you're on vacation because everything's different. You're having to re-engage the front of your brain anyway. And that's, once you're having to re-engage the front of your brain, well, you can make a new, more efficient choice. So it's kind of interesting to see that if you can start on focusing on the positive habit that you want to form, it's the old bad habit will kind of fade and get pushed out of the way and be less powerful.
Awesome. Well, all these talks about brownies make me want to take a quick break here and go grab a brownie. But when we come back from the break, I want to talk about how this applies to organizing. We've kind of talked about why habits are important, but let's talk about how you get better organized by changing some habits. So we're with Shauna Turner from the Shauna Method, and we'll be right back. When you've got it together, everyone can tell. Your confidence is obvious. Introducing Viewables.com from Smead. Use the Viewables labeling system to transform your drawer of hanging files into a tidy, organized filing system. Using the premium hanging folder tabs, see the label from the front, top, and back. It's easy. Access Viewables.com from any computer, tablet, or internet-enabled smartphone. Let's make some labels. It's free, and there's nothing to download or install. Choose the label type and format your label just the way you want. You can even add index characters or icons for distinctive filing. Set up a free Viewables cloud account, and your secure login lets you save your projects for convenient access from any computer. And with Viewables multi-purpose labels, you can use one label for any type of file, including hanging folders, top tab folders, super tab folders, or oversized items like notebooks and file boxes. Upload a list of file headings and print your complete set of labels in moments. There's even a library of templates for commonly used label sets. It's never been easier to set up neat-looking files that have easy-to-read headings and efficient color codes. Obviously organized. Viewables.com. From Smead, keeping you organized. We are back now on Keeping You Organized, talking about habits, why they're important, and how you create them. We're with Shauna Turner from the Shauna Method, and before the break, we were talking more about, how habits get created. We talked more in a general sense. We talked about the triangle with the triggers and the effect. But Shauna, I want to get now into organizing because this is an organizing show. Let's talk about some ways to apply this on how to get organized. And maybe you can use some stories from clients of yours that have had to develop new habits to get better organized.
Right. So, I think that habits are a really powerful way to become organized because it's all about putting a system in place for yourself that you will follow repeatedly and that will end up with you having a consistent result. So it's all about systems. That's what I think about. It's about systems. So a habit is a system that you repeatedly use. And I think what I have found with my clients is if we can get them onto a system for whatever their bad situation was, and we can keep using it week after week, that it will become a habit. And then, the problems that they were having, they don't feel like problems anymore because they're coping much more effectively with the situation.
Well, and I think if it's a habit or a system, you again need that time. So do you have something that you work with your clients that helps them through that first few weeks until it becomes a routine? Do you check in with them, or do they have a way that they can on a daily basis, assess how well they're doing?
Yeah, so we're real specific when we're trying to roll out a new habit, and I'll be very hands-on in the beginning with them, and they can text me, if they're having a problem with something that we set up, because it's important to note that anytime you try something new, there may be some aspects of it. You shouldn't allow that to trash your whole plan. You just need to be flexible and regroup a little bit and see if there's a small tweak you can be making that'll make the plan work better. So one of the common examples I see is pretty much everyone in life struggles with paperwork, whether you're in an office setting or in a home setting, because paper is constantly coming into our lives. It can be coming in through the mail. It can be paper someone's dumping on your desk. It can be paperwork you're coming back from a meeting with. And what people tend to do is bring it all together in a sort of an unsorted pile and dump it on their desk or on the kitchen counter or on the entryway table. And this is sort of a bad habit, to dump it, because all that people are doing is taking a task and pushing it off until later. In addition, with paper, because it is flat, it's easy for things to get piled on top of your paperwork. So maybe you come in and put the paper down, the mail down on your kitchen counter and think I'll deal with it tonight. But in the meantime, maybe kids come in and put their backpack on top of it, or maybe another person comes in the office and dumps some more files on top of it. And so now the task is harder because in addition to having to deal with the actual stack of paper, it's now buried underneath other paper. So it's now a two-step task instead of a one-step task. So with almost all of my clients, I say when paper comes in, we need to sort it. We don't have to take action and bring every item in the stack to completion, but we need to triage and sort the paper. So taking the mail as the example, instead of just picking up the mail whenever I happen to drive in and see it sitting there, I say, let's wait. Let's wait, and you go out and get the mail when you have 5 minutes. At max, it's probably only 2, but wait until you have the time to bring it in and sort it at the moment you bring it in. And then when we bring it in, we can triage or sort out that mail, throw away the trash or recycle it,
right.
Take the bills out of the envelopes and put them in a file that says to pay. Anything that you need to read can go in a file that says to read, and then you trash everything else. So now when it comes time to pay the bills, you have a nice little folder that's already cleaned out, ready to go, and you can just either go online or pull out your checkbook and pay the bills. You don't also have to sort through 3 or 4 days of mail and decide what's a bill, and see, that just adds time. But if you spend the 2 minutes a day sorting it out into the files, when it comes time to take action, you'll be much more efficient, and you also won't have the mess of paperwork sitting on your table or your counter or your desk.
Now, back to the idea of the trigger then. So how in your system do you trigger someone on a daily basis to deal with that mail or that paperwork?
So the trigger would be thinking about, well, when am I going to get the mail?
Okay.
When am I going to go and take it out of the mailbox? So if your habit had been to go out and get the mail or pick it up when you were driving in at the end of the day, that's where we want to put the change in place. And we want to say, instead, let's identify a time of day that you believe you will have 5 minutes. So maybe you'll say, well, typically I have a few minutes while I'm waiting for people to come to dinner, or I have a few minutes while the kids are up in the shower, or maybe night is terrible for me. I'm crazy and exhausted, but once everybody gets on the school bus and goes out in the next morning, your mail can sit in the mailbox overnight. You know, it's okay. If that's your moment, then do it in the morning instead.
Right. Right. Well, let's talk about maybe one other area that's popular. I say popular is maybe not the right word, but as you work with clients, another area to implement a system that's going to develop a good habit. We talked about the paper. What's another big one?
So another one I love is to teach people to use a staging area.
Okay.
So a staging area is a clear space that is sort of dedicated only to you. And you don't want to put anything there except whatever you're going to be needing tomorrow. So let's say if I'm a student, that might be a place where before I go to bed, I'm going to put my backpack and any permission slips I need signed, my gym clothes, my instrument, whatever it may be. It's a holding place that is safe and sort of sanctified for the purpose of holding what you need when you're going to be going out next. If you're a mom, maybe there's a section of the counter and everybody in the house knows that's mom's area, and mom can put down the paper she's going to need for the PTA meeting or the reminders of where she needs to stop when she goes out on her errands tomorrow. Or if I work in an office, maybe I'm going to set aside a section of my desk, and whenever I come across something that I'm going to be needing for a meeting that's coming up, it's going to go in that spot. And the reason this is such a powerful habit is that we frequently think or come across items we will be needing, whether it's tomorrow or at 4 o'clock or whatever. We come across those things not at the exact moment that we need to walk out the door, but at some other random moment. So maybe I'm working at my desk and I'm working on client A, and I suddenly remember, oh, when I meet client B tomorrow, I need to remember to bring this piece of paper. Well, I thought of it now, so I could get up, take that piece of paper, put it in my staging area, and it will be ready. Whereas frequently when you're getting ready to walk out the door for client B, maybe you wouldn't think of that. It's because that's how our brains work. There are synapses firing all the time that make us think of things, maybe not at the most convenient moment. So if you have a designated spot that's just for you, where you can put the items you're going to be needing, put them there when you think of them, you'll be much more efficient and less likely to forget something important.
Awesome. These are incredible tips, and I know habits. It's popular right now. There are tons of books out there about it, right. And we're just about out of time, so I want to give you a chance just to talk about your business a little bit, what kind of work you do, and how people can get a hold of you.
Well, that's nice of you to give me the opportunity. So I'm a professional organizer. My company's the Shauna Method, and I work with...
And the phones are ringing off the hook. That is incredible. Look at that. We've mentioned it one time, and they're already calling you.
So I work with small business clients and residential clients, and I help them to organize their time, their space, and their belongings. So we work on those three things, again, as three legs of the stool. They all need to be working together. I also blog, and I give out a lot of information on social media. So happy to have people join me at theshaunamethod.com for free information, or to hop in at Facebook or Twitter or Pinterest, where we share ideas on how to organize those three things.
Awesome. Well, I hope a lot of people will do that, and I hope that phone keeps ringing too. So, Shauna, it was great to have you, and we'll have you back again in the future on another episode. So, well, there you go, folks. You should have some good habits now, and one habit I'd have you do is just make sure every week you go to smead.com/podcast and listen to the latest podcast, or watch it. It's both audio and video, and you'll have an opportunity to develop some really good organizing habits. So until next time, John Hunt for Keeping You Organized. Coming up next time on Keeping You Organized.
The meetings happen for a variety of reasons, and they can be great opportunities to collaborate and brainstorm, to move forward on something. But when certain things are in place, then we ensure that the time spent in the meeting is more productive.